All right, so welcome everybody to the Groovy and JavaFX session. We're going to show you Grazie, which is Bertrand's very own version of Prezi written in GroovyFX. All right, so I'm Stephen Chin, JavaFX evangelist for Oracle now, longtime open source contributor, hacker on JavaFX stuff. You can check out my blog, steveonjava.com, or follow me on Twitter. And my co-presenter?
And I'm Bertrand Gutzman. I work for LaserCMag as a Java 2E architect. LaserCMag is a software company specialized in retail industry. And it provides solutions for point-of-sale softwares, for loyalty, and sales promotion. And each year, LaserCMag puts on the market new and innovative solutions. I also work for my own company, Audilia Technologies. I offer training on Groovy and Grazie. And I also create websites with a powerful CMS Drupal.
All right, so let me give you guys a quick introduction to JavaFX and GroovyFX in particular. This will be JavaFX. Hopefully, is not new for anyone, so there's only one slide on that. GroovyFX is hopefully new for a couple people who are learning about it, other than the GroovyFX contributors sitting in the audience. Thank you, Dirk. And Grazie should hopefully be new and exciting for everybody. And you're actually watching a presentation in Grazie right now. So the application we're using for the presentation is the Grazie presentation framework. So JavaFX 2.0, this is the high-level overview. It's a rich desktop framework. You can build animation, graphics, integrate media, integrate HTML, do 3D graphics in it. It has hardware acceleration for all of your graphics, so it takes advantage of your GPU for accelerating 2D and 3D graphics. And you can use all of your favorite Java IDEs and tooling. So as of JavaFX 2, JavaFX is all written in pure Java code, so you can take advantage of NetBeans, EFX clips. There's a nice plugin for Eclipse, or you can use it straight out of the box. IntelliJ as well, or JDeveloper. Anyone else have a favorite IDE? All right, we probably covered the gamut. Next. JavaFX is also now open source. So you can go to the Open JDK project, download all of the controls code, check it out. JemiFX, which is a test framework, is also open source. And if you were at the keynote on Sunday, Hassan, VP of Java Engineering, announced that the rest of the JavaFX project will be open source by the end of the year. So you got something to look forward to. How many people here are OpenJDK contributors? All right, so we gotta fix that. all of you should be OpenJDK contributors, and if for some reason you hit an issue which it doesn't quite I'm pointing at someone in the audience, it doesn't quite build, or you can't get the code working, or it's hard to contribute patches, let me know, and I'll find the people and I will make their lives miserable until they resolve your problems. Okay, next. And it's going to run on embedded devices. So the JavaFX embedded developer preview for BeagleBoard was released Saturday, I believe, very recently. If you've been walking around the conference, if you've seen the nice schedule kiosks, I helped build that, and that's all running on a Panda board. Actually, Jim and I both helped build that. And Rich and Jasper did the majority of the work. Yes, question? We don't have any of those we can buy at the conference today. Yeah, so we'll talk later. Just open the large checkbook and we'll take care of you. Yes, everything is for sale for the right price. Oh, you're talking about, I thought you wanted to buy a kiosk. Yeah, so I can direct you to the suppliers which sell Panda boards. Not at the conference. I would actually, for a development platform, you're probably currently better off with BeagleBoard XM, which is what we support. That's what the release which went out was for. So if you get a BeagleBoard XM, you can use a developer preview. Raspberry Pi is the other one I would recommend. Support for that should be forthcoming. Disclaimer, disclaimer, no future-looking statements, etc. Okay, next. All right, JavaFX with Groovy. So, you're here for a Groovy session. I don't think I need to convince you why Groovy is an awesome JVM language. As of recently, it's both dynamic and strongly typed. You can actually do strongly typed stuff right in Groovy, which is cool. And it's the easiest JVM language to get started with. If you can write Java code, then you're already a Groovy hacker. Just rename your files to .groovy and off you go. Well, almost, but change a few permissions and then you're off to go. All right, next. And you might be wondering, what does GroovyFX code look like? So I have quite a bit of Java code on the left and GroovyFX code on the right. And if you guys have binoculars or telescopes, you can learn all about GroovyFX on this slide. But no, seriously, this slide's not meant to be read. It's just a comparison of It's a comparison of how small it is to write Java code versus Groovy code. So the Java code for the sample application was 40 lines. This is the Vanishing Circles application from my blog and from the JavaFX SDK. 40 lines, 1299 characters. The GroovyFX version's 29 lines and 671 characters. So you're going to be a much happier coder coding with GroovyFX than you would with straight Java. All right, next. All right, so let's look at an actual GroovyFX application. Next. All right, so first you create your scene graph builder to construct your GroovyFX scene graph. Here's how you create a stage in GroovyFX, so you can use name parameters to pass in exactly what arguments you want. Next. You can do little property definitions. This is setting random locations for the circles, and then setting the radius to 150 and a stroke of white. Next. And you can also do binding. This is there's two different bind syntaxes in GroovyFX. So this is showing the example where it's using the string version to grab out the property hover, and then has a converter to go from val. Whenever you hover, it's going to make the border larger, and then when you unhover, it will hide the border by setting it to 0. And the last one there is he's showing the loop creation. So you can also use all the Groovy features. This is an example of a very quick way to do iteration in a fixed number of times with Groovy. If you did the equivalent Java code, you need a for loop and a counter variable and blah, 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 blah. So what do you guys think? Are you sold? GroovyFX all the way?
Sure.
All right.
You can even spare the scene graph builder reference the second time. It's automatically to delegate on the
Oh, that would be nice. I guess I should update my code and then reduce the line count on the previous slide, shouldn't I? Thank you, Dirk. All right, animation in GroovyFX. So GroovyFX also has a built-in animation syntax. I think I have a build for this. Go to the next slide. So 40.s is it's actually calling the function s on the number 40. It's an extension method, and it creates a duration object. So you have a properly typed duration object for your JavaFX code. Normally in JavaFX, you'd have to do duration.seconds and pass in 40 as the parameters. This is much shorter and easier to read. Also, it's using a little DSL here. So @ starts your set of keyframes. Click next. the little keyframe DSL where you can do change property to value and then set it to a different value. And this won't immediately update. It's going to create the animation and the keyframes so that this will execute with your application. Next. And you can also add tweening. So in tweening in JavaFX is you can speed up and slow down the rate of animation. And there are some built-in tweens which are convenient for easing into or out of an animation to make it more smooth. Next. All right, event listeners in GroovyFX. So here's an example of an event listener. And again, it has a little animation inside of it. Click next. It's using a closure syntax. So you have a very compact method body. If you did this in pure Java code, you'd have an inner class. You'd have like this big monstrous, like implement the handle method, get all these parameters, ignore them because you don't really need them, et cetera, et cetera. But in Groovy, you can optionally have the event parameter. You can actually leave that off and go next. Oh yeah, okay. So anyway, that was animation. I thought I had one more build. And there's even more grooviness. So this code is, the way this rest of this presentation works is I show you some ugly Java code, and then we show you what it looks like in GroovyFX. So go back for a second. So in case you've never, most people don't actually show this code because it's ugly and it's monstrous, but JavaFX has all these classes with properties in them. And you're like, oh yeah, I just, I get this property and I use it and it's so easy. And no, if you look at the implementation, every single property has chunks of code like this to define the getters and the setters, and you have to initialize the property, and then you have to check conditions for null. And actually, this is not the fully optimized version. There's some other little tricks you need to put in here so that if you get the value when it's null, it returns the default value. All these little things you have to do to fully optimize the property pattern in your code. And it's just, you have to do it in Java, like, getters and setters and beans. It's required. But it's so much easier in GroovyFX. So you just at fx bindable. And it uses the AST transform feature in Groovy, and it actually code generates a version of the code, a fully optimized version of the code on the previous slide. And it even handles, go to the next slide. It even handles an initializer case. So you can initialize it, and it properly sets the initializers in the right place. Next. And you, of course, can use very elegant Groovy syntax for getting and setting properties. You don't have to do all those setters and getters, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, question?
Is that property read-only?
These properties are not read-only, but you can create read-only properties. Is there a syntax in GroovyFX for read-only properties?
Final. You give them final modifier.
Okay, and then it generates the, thank you, Dirk.
If you need to add an invalidation listener, then you just have, you need to run some code when the document changes. So if you update your person.
So I believe it's a normal property. You can just add an invalidation listener or an update listener to it, and it will direct just like a JavaFX property. It actually code generates the JavaFX property code. All right, next. And you can also do binding off of these properties. This is the other bind syntax where it's actually using the property rather than the name of the property. You could do either. Next. Okay, so in case you guys haven't noticed, questions at any time are perfectly valid. So feel free to interrupt myself or Bertrand, and we will answer questions as they come. Binding in GroovyFX. This is an example of binding a whole class. If you put fx bindable on a class, all the properties, all the variables in the class become properties, which is very convenient. And this is an example of part of a clock where you're binding different variables together to update the hands of the clock as the time changes. Next. All right, so next one, Java code, table view. Everyone together. The table view in Java, the control is wonderful. And the type safety is awesome. It has all these generics, and it makes sure that you can never, ever do anything wrong with the... But it's a pain in the neck to write. The first time, I thought I was pretty good with generics, but then the first time I read a table view, I didn't quite have the syntax right for like where the angle brackets go after the dots and funky cases for specifying generics on. It's just, yeah. Okay, so let's not do that. Next. There, GroovyFX. Table view, column, 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 and super easy. All right, next slide. Layout in Java. So layouts actually, they're not quite as hairy, but there's this awkwardness with constraints in layouts. Since they wanted to make it very easy to add your own layouts without modifying the base node class, since constraints, you really want to be on the containing elements for maybe the margins or the padding or the width and height, they made the API a bunch of static methods on the layout class. So if you add something to an hbox, you have to do hbox.set hgrow, and then pass in the layout, and then pass in the value of the constraint. Same thing for margins and other layout constraints. And internally, what that's doing is it actually, there's a special map on nodes where it dumps in all these constraints into a big hash map and stores them all in the background. And it's, yeah. Anyway, Java's type safe, so they had to work around. It's not easy to add extension methods. It's not easy to do this stuff. But it works, and it lets you add your own layouts. But in Groovy, we can hide all this and just let you specify the constraints inline and take care of all that funk for you. So you can actually naturally specify layouts without the whole, yeah. So that's layouts in GroovyFX. And WebView is a great example. If you're doing a demo of JavaFX and you want to do a 3-liner, pop a WebView and then put a fancy URL in, and then your app looks really fancy. And then, of course, put cool JavaFX stuff around the edges so it looks even better. Next. This is a grid pane example in GroovyFX as well. If you've used the grid pane control, it's very powerful. It's one of the most flexible layouts in JavaFX, but it's not as easy to use without GroovyFX. It's quite nice to use with GroovyFX. Next. And then that's the example of the layout. On the left is without the grid lines, and the right is with the grid lines. The grid lines are useful for debugging your grid pane layout, so very useful to try out. Next.
Is that just an extra parameter?
Yeah. Go back for a sec. I think it was there. Back one more. Back.
Back again. Okay.
Yeah, back. Okay, this example doesn't have it, but it's I think it's called grid pane grid lines. Grid lines is the property, and you set it to true, and then you get the grid lines. But very useful for debugging. Next. All right, so GroovyFX supports, and just keep clicking as I talk. So it supports, animations and binding, and next, gradients, layouts, FXML. You can load FXML definitions using GroovyFX, so you can use Scene Builder with GroovyFX. Tables, charts, trees, and media. This is an example of Dean Iverson, who is one of the founders of GroovyFX. He helps run a team for the first robotics competition. So this is a nice little, if you get our Pro JavaFX book, he has a video on the, actually you don't even need to buy the book, you can just download the code, and there's a video in the code samples. Okay, next. And it also supports Griffin. Where's Andre when we need him? But Andre's been spreading the good word. Some of our attendees knew about Griffin, so that's good. Okay. You like Griffin. So if you did the default template for Griffin, you would get that JavaFX application. And of course, you can keep customizing it from there. Next. All right, and before I turn it over to my co-presenter, I'm going to shamelessly plug. You're probably wondering why I'm dressed up in all this motorcycle gear. So part of it is that's how I got to the conference. But the other part is I'm actually going to be touring around Europe right before Devoxx, October 29th to November 11th of this year. And I'm going to be live streaming the interviews and the visits. And you can go to the website, nighthacking.com. It has a Ustream feed where you'll see the live URL. Sign up so you get notifications when I go online and offline. And I think I'm visiting Basel, Switzerland. Do you guys know anyone in Basel? So some of the you might even get to meet some of the GroovyFX team, or at least the JavaFX team at Canoe while I'm out there, virtually. Well, I'm also set it up with social chat, so you guys can chat, and I'll have a little screen up, and then as you guys say things, I'll poke the folks I'm coding or hacking with or interviewing, and get them to answer all the mean questions you guys come up with. Okay, thanks. Yes, that's it. All right.
So let's continue with Grazie. What is Grazie? Grazie is a project I wrote, and it is based on the GroovyFX project. And as Stefan said, GroovyFX is a Groovy binding for JavaFX too. So Grazie facilitates the implementation of zooming user interface. So what is UI? It's difficult to say. UI is simply said, UI is a 2D graphical environment in which the user is free to move and change the scale of the viewed area to see more or less details. So with the Grazie project, what I call the UI presentation, it's simply a Groovy script. And so I use the Grazie library in order to run Grazie presentation. So I will show you some demonstration in a moment. So what a user can do with Grazie. A user can move and change the scale freely in a virtual 2D space. He also can automatically zoom in one element of the presentation. And you can also define a predefined path for a presentation. Grazie also implements a browsing history, and you have the possibility to reload a presentation, a Grazie presentation. It's useful if you want to tune your presentation. So Grazie uses a powerful GroovyFX DSL in order to build an interactive Java scene. And so you have special Groovy variables available. The first one is the map closure. It's a variable that is mandatory to build the JavaFX scene. You also have the with scene closure if you want to deal with scene object. You can use also the special variable path if you want to create a predefined path. It's just a simple list of nodes. So you can add, as you want, nodes to the path. And then you have focus on node. It's a special closure that you can use in your Grazie presentation in order to automatically focus I mean zoom in on a specific node. And now let's continue with some crazy demos. For that, I will use a simple text editor with which I can run a Gradle task. Gradle is a powerful building tool that is part of the Groovy ecosystem. So here, I just use a Gradle task to run Grazie with the current file. So the first presentation is a simple slideshow. I would like to show you my fractal collection, and for that, I use a Grazie presentation. So, in action. Here the goal is to put on the scene images coming from a specific folder. And with Grazie, I'm able to navigate between nodes that are added to the predefined path by pressing the left arrow key. I move from one image to another. I go back. I can also freely navigate on the Grazie presentation, and so I use the wheel mouse in order to zoom out, and the right button mouse to move around my scene. As you can see, I can zoom in and zoom out. I added also a shadow effect on each images. And I can also, in this specific presentation, click on text, like this, to have an automatic zoom in. And Grazie takes care of the rotation of objects. For example, if I press this text, I can return. So how this presentation is made? I will make some comments on the code. As I said, you must have first a map variable that defines your scene. It's here. The first thing is to build a hashbox container that will contain another hashbox panel in which we will create image view. So here we are using a Groovy loop that is added to the file class. It's each file match. So the idea is to browse images from a folder, here images, and to browse JPEG images. So you can, in the loop, create image view with images inside. And as you can see here, we use our focus on node closure injected in the script. And once the image we created, it is added to the path. This is the way we define a predefined path in the Grazie presentation. Then here you have the creation of an JavaFX 2 effect, a drop shadow. As it will be applied to all images because the effect is defined in the hashbox container. And following the hashbox container, we create two labels. And for the second one, as you can see here, we define a rotation. So I will put another label. With the text Java 1, and I just change here and use the focus on node closure in order to, when the user will click on the label, so the focus will be passed to the first image in the path. I save the file and I return to my presentation, and I just refresh the scene by pressing the F5 key. I go back, and then you see here the added label. I click on it, and I focus directly in the first images. So this is the way you can build easily a Grazie presentation. So let's move on to another crazy demonstration. And this time we will use Grazie in combination with GroovyFX. GroovyFX is a software graph visualization library that permits to build a graph as diagrams. And so with GroovyFX you can execute commands and use specific layouts in order to produce diagrams in different output formats like SVG or PDF or image and so on. And here we will just use GroovyFX with its text format. The idea with the text format is to interpret what GroovyFX will output, because in the text format you will have all the information in order to build nodes and edges of the diagram. So with GroovyFX, the first thing is to define a graph. As you can see here, we have a simple graph. You define node like run, kernel, zombie, and relation between nodes just with these characters. As you can see, it's some sort of DSL. And so in order to build the Grazie presentation, a GroovyFX command will be executed by the presentation. I will not go into details, but here we execute the circle command in order to put nodes with a certain layout. So let's see it in action. So the presentation has interpreted the output of GroovyFX command, and we are so able to build this kind of presentation. For example, here I can zoom in on run snap, and I put also some animation using timeline. And you can navigate here. So you get the idea. So it was a powerful combination in order to build a sophisticated Grazie presentation. If you have data coming from database or something like that. And then we can go a step further by adding more interactivity in the Grazie presentation. In the preceding Grazie presentation, we started from a static graph. Here, we will build, the user will build the graph for the presentation. Here I create some nodes. Java 1, Groovy, so here the user is able to connect nodes together. And so we apply, with the help of GroovyFX, we apply a specific layout. I can add some other nodes, like, for example, Stefan. Oops. I will put Bertrand. A last node. So here we are. So after this interactivity, I can continue with another demonstration that uses a WebView component. This is one of my favorite components of JavaFX. But before to launch the demonstration, I can show you a simple Grazie presentation, and with some comments here, we simply have a web view in the Grazie presentation, and I will not go into great detail, but the idea is here we are loading some content in order to load and to build a page for our web view. As you can see, we have a script, a JavaScript function here, and a body here. So what is interesting with the WebView component from JavaFX is the possibility to have a two-way communication between your JavaFX application and the JavaScript inside a WebView component. This is what we do here. We have the possibility to execute JavaScript. So when the document is loaded, this code is executed, and then here we execute set message in JavaScript with a string hello, and we return document. So what set message does? It simply change the inner HTML of the DOM element here. We have a paragraph tag with a ID message. So when the page is loaded, we simply change lorem ipsum by hello. Okay for that. This is one way, and for the other way, we are able to add a listener. For example, here when we will click on the button, and so we can react by executing some code here. We will simply display event received. Okay. So the set message JavaScript function is well called because the text appears here, and when I press click me, as you can see, we can see that the event is received. Okay. So I show you this Grazie presentation in order to show you a more sophisticated example that use two web views, and in this presentation we use something like as we show. So here you have the first WebView component that use the bubble tree JavaScript library, and the web page is built with Groovy from data coming from a JSON file. So you can with this you can build a powerful presentation. So what I'm going to do is to click on the special character, and then I can display a second web view. That is also another HTML5 presentation. I can navigate between slides, and then by pressing exit button, I return to my first web view. So this is what I point at. It's with JavaFX, and by using WebView components, you can really build a powerful presentation. And to finish, I would like to show you two fun demonstrations. The first one uses the Gbox 2D physics engine, and as it's a Java library, of course you can use it in Grazie. I start the presentation. So you have balls that are dropped on top of the screen, and they bounce on walls. Just another time. And as it is Grazie, you can zoom in and zoom out like this. A last one. Recently, in JavaFX 2, so there is a new canvas component that was added to the components. So I can show you a demonstration with a canvas components. In fact, this example is a re-implementation of an HTML5 experiment that you can find, and you can find it on the Akim's website. Akim is a web developer, and there is a very interesting experiment in HTML5 and the use of canvas, and it was a challenge for me to re-implement the same example in JavaFX. So in the original code, you have an HTML5 page that uses a canvas object, and the idea is to show a wave simulation with a bubble that permits to show tweets. And in this demonstration, in the original demonstration, you have some code that queries a PHP server part in order to fetch latest queries on a specific term. So I do the same with Grazie. When I move the mouse, there is some effect on the wave. And the idea is to click on bubble in order to show tweets.
Anyone know who? Anyone know who JavaFX expert is? No, nobody knows here. Okay.
So in this Grazie example, as we are in the desktop size, I used the HTTP builder, the Groovy HTTP builder, in order to query tweets using the REST API of Twitter.
All right, so let's give Bertrand a big round of applause.
A last effect here, as we are on Grazie, you can do this.
Excellent. So Bertrand flew all the way here. This is your first Java 1?
Yes.
Have you been in the US before?
Just as attendee.
Is this your first visit to the US?
The second.
Second?
Yeah.
Okay. But is this very first Java 1? I was very glad to meet him. We met at the Great Conf, and I knew all the great work he'd done on Grazie, and invited him to come co-speak with me. So thank you very much. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to visit him. I'm going to stop by as part of the night hacking tour I mentioned earlier, and we'll do some more Grazie hacking in your hometown. Yeah. Can you pop to the JPedal slide?
Yeah.
All right, and I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the JPedal folks. So the PDF portion of the talk, or the slide portion of the talk, was done with JPedal using PDFs inside of JavaFX. And they have an open source solution for this, and they also have a commercial product around this as well, which has some additional features. But it's a nice library for taking advantage of doing PDFs inside of your JavaFX application. And the guys, Mark Stevens and the other guys from JPedal are here in the pavilion if you'd like to chat with them. All right, so thanks everybody for attending our GroovyFX and Grazie session. I hope you guys learned something new, and please take the time to fill out the attendee surveys and give us feedback on our talk. Thank you.
Thank you.